Hello, Internet family. This is Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib, and you are listening to Monday Night Quarterback, also home of Music Monday. So tonight, I'm not going to have it. Tonight, I don't have any scriptures for you, mainly because tonight I want to recognize two icons that have made their transition this past week. So unless you've been under a rock, you know that former First Lady Rosalynn Carter has made her transition. When I was seeing in the news that she and her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, were being placed in hospice, I kind of felt like one or both of them didn't have much longer. So if you've seen pictures of them, you know they are pretty up in age. At the time that they were in the White House, let me see here. So they both have been married. They've been married to each other since 1946. They've been married to each other almost as long as my mother has been alive. So let me see. She was born in 1947. So that's the first person who has made their transition. The second to make their transition may not be known to some of you unless you run in church circles or were part of the Pentecostal movement, and for the, what they call UPC or whatever. And his name is Bishop Carlton Pearson. I'll just call him by the name he was best known as. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of biographical information on both people. Like I said, I remember Bishop Pearson. I remember being a part of a church diocese that he was a part of. He was a well-known author. He was part of the Azusa movement. Either way, now, I'll be giving you more information on him a little bit later. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about Miss Carter. So I always thought that her and her husband, former President Jimmy Carter, seemed like they were pretty decent people. I think the most problems that I remember reading about President Carter were not really President Carter, but he had a brother named Billy. And so during his time in office, his brother seemed to like to get into a lot of stuff. And me being very young when they were in office, so let me go ahead and give you some biographical information on the former First Lady. So Eleanor Rosalynn Carter was born August 18, 1927, and, made her transition November 19th, 2023. She was an American writer and activist who served as the First Lady of the United States from 1977 to 1981. So he was a one-term president. I'm trying to think. 77, I was still in elementary school during the time that they were in there. So, and you see that I'm like 57 now. So this was a long time ago. She was the wife of Jimmy Carter, as we said. Throughout her decades of public service, she was perhaps best known for being a leading advocate for women's rights and mental health. And so they had 4 children together. The most famous of their children was their daughter, Amy Carter. So let me see here. Amy is a year younger than me, so she is 56. I always thought she looked a lot like her father. So she was also known for a lot of political activism as well. Let me see. She has 2 children, so they have grandchildren. I'll get more into her personal life later. But Rosalynn, who is the topic here, Miss Rosalynn, was born and raised in Plains, Georgia, and graduated as valedictorian of Plains High School, and soon after attended Georgia Southwestern College, where she graduated in 1946. She first became attracted to her husband, also from Plains, after seeing a picture of him in his U.S. Naval Academy uniform, and they married in 1946. She helped her husband win the governorship of Georgia in 1970 and proceeded to focus her attention in the field of mental health when she was that state's first lady. She campaigned for her husband during his successful bid to become president of the United States in the 1976 election, defeating a Republican President Gerald Ford. So Miss Carter was politically active during her husband's presidency, though she declared she had no intention of being a traditional first lady. During his term of office, she supported her husband's public policies as well as his social and personal life. In order to remain fully informed, she sat in on cabinet meetings at the invitation of the president. She also represented her husband in meetings with domestic and foreign leaders, including as an envoy to Latin America in 1977. If you've been looking at any of the news reports, you already know that he, was very vocal about, considering her to be an equal partner. She campaigned for his re-election bid in 1980, which he lost to Republican Ronald Reagan. After leaving the White House in 1981, she continued to advocate for mental health and other causes and wrote several books. She and her husband contributed to the expansion of the nonprofit housing organization Habitat for Humanity. She was the second longest lived First Lady after Bess Truman, and was the longest married First Lady. She and her husband received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1999. And she, of course, we know she just passed away this past week on November 19th, 2 days after it had been announced that she had entered hospice care. So let me see here. So we pretty much have already gone into, let's go into her politics. After helping her husband win the governorship of Georgia, which we already covered, she decided to focus her attention mainly on the field of mental health when she was that state's first lady. She was appointed to the Governor's Commission to improve services for the mentally and emotionally handicapped. Many of the commission's recommendations were approved and became law. In August 1971, she engaged in a statewide tour of mental health facilities across Georgia. She described her efforts on behalf of mentally disabled children as her proudest achievement as First Lady of Georgia. She also served as a volunteer at the Georgia Regional Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, and for 4 years was honorary chairperson for the Georgia Special Olympics. Her work in addressing social issues made her virtually revered in professional healthcare circles. Her activities included entertaining as many as 750 people a week for dinner at the governor's mansion. Governor Carter much claimed that he had supported the Equal Rights Amendment while his wife was opposed to the measure. Yeah, I was about to say, she ain't been gone but a couple of days. So it's only, Well, since I'm part of the press now, I don't necessarily have a negative attitude, but if there's anything to find, it'll get found. The First Lady privately confronting him upon hearing news of the claim. She corrected him by later announcing to the press, "I thought I knew what Rosalynn thought, but I was wrong." Oh, he corrected himself, excuse me. So I wonder why she was privately, oh, let me look here. Okay, so her husband claimed that he had supported it while his wife was opposed to it. She privately confronted him upon hearing news of this claim. Okay, so she may not have been opposed to the Equal Rights Amendment. Yeah, I was about to say, I wonder what it was she opposed. So now when her husband's term ended in 1975, she and her husband and their daughter Amy returned to Plains, Georgia. And her husband had announced his plans to run for president of the United States. So she got back on the campaign trail, this time as a national guest, to gather support for her husband. She campaigned alone on his behalf in 41 states. That's a lot. Because of her husband's obscurity at the time, she often had to answer the question, "Jimmy who?" That's cold. They don't ask that now. She promoted the establishment of additional daycare facilities and adjustments to Social Security and so many other things to help the elderly. So I'm not going to, anything else that you want to know about her, I am reading out of her Wikipedia page. So let's get down here. Because, honey, this is a very long article. I don't plan on being before you long. Okay, let me see. Okay, so evidently she did support the Equal Rights Amendment. So she spoke to feminists about her equal partnership with her husband. And in 1977, prior to his inauguration, she substituted for him in speaking with Senator Burke Bay over the phone, as the latter wanted President-elect Carter to lobby for support of the Equal Rights Amendment being ratified in Indiana. She persuaded Wayne Townsend to switch his vote, and the Equal Rights Amendment was approved in an Indiana Senate vote of 26 to 24. In reference to her role in supporting it, Texas Christian University Associate professor of religion, Elizabeth Flowers, said, excuse me, Rosalynn Carter wanted to temper down some of the more radical elements of feminism as she saw it, and challenge what she felt were caricatures of the movement. She wanted to be sure that the struggle for ERA really appealed to mainstream America. So I may do a podcast on that later on, because there was quite a few controversies concerning that. Let me see here. So to get into her activism, after the Carters left the White House in 1981, Miss Rosalynn and her husband, Jimmy Carter, continued to lead a very active life. In 1982, she co-founded the Carter Center, a private not-for-profit institution based in Atlanta, Georgia. The Carters returned to the home they had built in 1961 in Plains, Georgia. She was a member of the center's board of trustees and participated in many of the center's programs, but gave special attention to the mental health program. Carter and her husband fell into serious debt immediately after leaving the White House, but were able to pay off their debts by engaging in writing projects, and eventually were able to open the Carter Center, from their revenue. She, like Betty Ford before her, would say that the American people made a mistake in not re-electing her husband, and was bitter over the election. At the time, she expressed resentment of Ronald Reagan and even told interviewer Mike Wallace that he was ruining the country. Rumors at this time spread that she was running for governor of Georgia, which she denied and outright stated she had no political ambition. Nearly 2 decades later, when Hillary Clinton was pondering whether or not to run for senator in New York, Miss Carter was asked why she had not run for the Georgia Senate. And she responded, "What would I have done in Washington with Jimmy in Georgia?" So Miss Rosalynn and her husband's first major project with the Carter Center was to help broker a peace deal between Israel and its neighbors. The two visited the Middle East in March 1983 and worked with Kenneth W. Stern and other associates of the Carter administration. They invited top leaders from a wide range of cities and countries, including the Palestinians, Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. In the early summer of 1986, the Carters aided the poor by helping to build homes. On the north and west sides of Chicago. The two were accompanied by members of the Habitat for Humanity as they wielded hammers and saws while working for a week to construct homes in a vacant lot. In 1991, the Carters removed themselves and the Carter Center from direct involvement with the Middle East at the time that President George H.W. Bush's administration, especially Secretary of State James Baker, became more active in that region. However, they did monitor the Oslo Peace Agreement of 1993, which sprang from the President and Secretary of State's bringing Palestine and other parties involved in the matter of a conference in Madrid. So they said many times that, she she was a big advocate for mental health services. And once again, if you want to read more about her activity, you can go to her Wikipedia page. It is a very long page. There's also articles about President Carter, former President Carter, as well as their daughter, Amy. So I'm going to go ahead and, switch up and begin to talk about Bishop Carlton Pearson. Okay. So Carlton Demetrius Pearson, born March 19th, 1953, and basically died the same day as First Lady Rosalynn Carter, November 19th, 2023. He was an American minister and gospel music artist. At one point, he was the pastor of the Higher Dimensions Evangelistic Center, Incorporated, and which later became Higher Dimensions Family Church, which was one of the largest churches in Tulsa, Oklahoma. During the 1990s, it grew to an average attendance of over 6,000. Oh, I did not know he and his wife divorced in 2019. So Carlton Pearson at one point was pretty tight with a pastor that I was under, the last church that I attended. And so he became a bit of a controversial figure because of his stance on a topic called universalism. So, or what they call inclusion, and was later determined to be a heretic. So, due to his stated belief in universal reconciliation, Pearson rapidly began to lose his influence in ministry with the Joint College of African American Pentecostal Bishops, and was eventually declared a heretic by his peers. So now, what is a heretic? So heresy is any belief or theory that is strongly at variance with established beliefs or customs, particularly the accepted beliefs or religious law of a religious organization. A heretic is a proponent of heresy. So you may be wondering, well, why was he declared a heretic? So this happened in 2004. So Bishop Pearson was subsequently the senior minister of Christ Universal Temple, a large New Thought congregation in Chicago, Illinois, head of a Higher Dimensions fellowship in Chicago, and an affiliate minister at Tulsa's All Souls Unitarian Church. So he attended Oral Roberts University, where he was mentored by Oral Roberts, and sang with the World Action Singers, and later became an associate evangelist with the Oral Roberts Evangelistic Association. He was licensed and ordained in the Church of God in Christ. Okay, or what they call, is that Kojic? So in 1981, he formed his own church called Higher Dimensions Evangelistic Center, which became one of the largest churches in Tulsa. Along with Dr. Frederick K. Price, he was at one time one of only 2 African-American ministers to host a weekly national television preaching show, reaching hundreds of thousands to millions of people weekly, and has been credited as being one of the first Black ministers to hold conference in arenas and stadiums around the country. During the 1990s, his church grew to an average weekly attendance of over 6,000. On the opening night of his annual Azusa conference in 1996, he was ordained as a bishop and then consecrated on the opening night of Azusa 97. He at one point campaigned for George W. Bush. That would be the first George that was in there, because the later George the later, let me see here. Okay, no, that would be wrong. So this one would be the second George W. the second. The first George Bush was his father. Okay. Pearson also had one of the most watched television programs on TBN, Trinity Broadcast Network. He was the host of the Azusa Conference in Tulsa. He was also a traveling evangelist, holding 2-day revivals across the continent. Pearson also gave many up-and-coming ministers and singers national exposure and a global audience, including T.D. Jakes, Joyce Meyer, and Donnie McClurkin. He also met with and counseled with former presidents George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. So I'm thinking, yeah, George Herbert Walker Bush is George Bush Sr. I sometimes get them confused. He also met and counseled with Bill Clinton. So he was also a gospel vocalist who won 2 Stellar Awards and was nominated for a Dove Award. So now we get to talk about him being declared a heretic. So the gospel of inclusion, so let me see here. So this is a quote. He says, a person who spends every day getting drunk will ruin their health, marriage, family, and career. They will make their lives a living hell. But that still falls far short of the chronic alcoholic being condemned by a just God to literally burn in hell forever and ever. For others, it may well be the punishment merited by their sins is greater than what they will receive in this life. For those people, perhaps there will be some type of punishment after death, but we believe it will be remedial and corrective rather than just punishment for punishment's sake. Exactly what that will be and how long it will last, we don't know. Will hell for some people last 10 minutes or up to 10 million years? We don't know. But this we do know: hell will not last for eternity. Now, you can hear some of the error if you've ever been raised, so you already hear the error. If I can say that, if you've ever read a Bible at all, you know that once we leave this life, we spend eternity somewhere. So you already, so like I said this past Friday, there's been a lot of mixture going on in the Christian church, period. So the inclusion, the pastor that I was under that I just left wrote a book called The Inclusion Confusion. And he was talking about the whole issue of the inclusion movement. And, it's a bit of a thing about being about, so it's a thing of everybody being saved and they don't know it. You know if you've accepted Christ. I remember when I accepted Christ. I remember the day that I accepted Christ. In fact, I remember the night, because it was at night. I'm going to say this to the Apostolic Church. Please stop trying to declare me a prostitute, because I'm not one. So, am I part of the inclusion? No. So let me say this. This is what I believe. I believe that Christianity is very inclusive, but it's inclusive depending on you accepting Christ. You can't be saved and not know it. And so he got caught up in it, and I'll talk about it some more this coming Wednesday, because I really don't want to be on here for very long. I'm looking at how long I've been up here now. And so it got him declared a heretic. I remember seeing a TV program that he was on, where he did an interview about that whole thing and how it happened. And I think this is actually a pretty good time to discuss all that, since I've been going into the scriptures and kind of setting people free, especially women, and especially this late war on women, and this whole war against single moms, based on a lot of false teachings. The bad thing is I left the church of the pastor that I was under, that was kind of tight with Bishop Pearson at one point. And there's a lot of goofiness there too. So it's kind of interesting that they were the ones to call Bishop Pearson a heretic. And a lot of their teachings now seem to be covering up human trafficking. And there seems to be some witchcraft going on up in there too. So this is one of the reasons why I give you all the word. And I give you the Bible and what the word has to say about things, because anybody can get turned around. And I think part of the broadcast that he was on, he went to a church that serves the LGBTQ community, and they kind of embraced him and took him in. And so you have that whole thing. But I think on Wednesday's live, I'm going to talk a little bit more about why Bishop Pearson was considered to be a heretic, and talk about some of the more recent teachings, because the Apostolic Church themselves, the movement that he came out of, they are not without error either. And there's been a whole lot of sexual misconduct coming out of that same movement. And it's like, okay, I can understand why they called him a heretic. I'm not going to act like I don't understand why he was called, a heretic, and why that particular train of thought needed to be confronted. You have to confront error. We are called as born again Christians. We are called as born again Christians to speak the truth in love. You have to correct somebody if they're in error. You can't walk around and let them teach unbiblical doctrine. I had to confront some stuff on my page this morning and talk about, these black women that are running around here practicing black magic in our churches. And I had to basically say, you're not worshiping the same God we worship. So you thinking that you have a right to prophesy over my life, you must be joking. So no, I am not a prostitute. And I am not a prostitute, and I am not your Jezebel. Okay, so if you're messing around with witchcraft and doing black magic, you are not serving the same God that we as born again Christians serve. And so I, have to let you know, I don't care what that demon you're serving has told you. I don't have to listen to a word you say. I don't have to listen to anybody who isn't following Christ at all, and won't be listening to you. If you are not following Christ, if you are trying to lead me back into sexual sin, I am not about to follow you. And it is, and like I said, I'm gonna talk more about this. When I'm gonna talk more about this on Wednesday, because I think that it is something that does need to be talked about. Because you have a lot of people who want to bring their own stuff in and then call born again Christians, oh, you're hypocrites because blah, blah. I'm like, listen, I'm not about to preach you happy, send you to hell. I'm not about to preach you happy, take your money, and then send you to hell. That ain't what I'm called to do. I'm called to win you to Christ. The Word of God says that we are called to make believers. I'm called to win you to Christ. I'm not called to win you to your own special belief system. I'm not called to tell you, to lie to you, take your money, and send you to hell, which is what many of your pastors are doing. To be perfectly honest with you, with some of the stuff that's been happening to me, especially in the spirit realm, I'm beginning to wonder if any of these pastors are truly saved. Because how do you be caught up in sexual sin and try to drag somebody with you and then claim you're on your way to heaven and that person is on their way to hell? So this Wednesday and Friday, I will probably be talking a little more into about the controversy involving Bishop Pearson, why he was, declared a heretic, why he got into trouble. And it wasn't that he got into any trouble like typical pastor trouble is money or their penis or something. His was teachings that he had started to follow. And I was attending a church of someone who was close to him when all of this started. And, people began to, and it was terrible. People began to avoid him. People began to not, be around him. So here you are, you're being punished. And people who you were tight with are no longer talking to you anymore. And the bad thing is, these are, this person began to be somebody who wound up trying to get at me and take me in a wrong direction. Right. Both these folks was in error, and I'm going to show you how. But this coming Wednesday and Friday, I'm going to go ahead and dedicate a little bit of that time to talking about doctrinal error and how to get back right once you're in error. But I wanted to first of all touch base because I don't want to keep missing Mondays. Last week I missed because I got caught up on my piano. So today I'm just like, you know what? I plan on this time next year being able to sing and play. And I was like, you know what? This time next year, I believe I'm going to be doing parties and, doing all of that stuff. So I'm going to have to get on here and really, really diligently practice and everything. But I'm learning stuff You know, I remember a friend of my son's mother saying, because my son is a person that likes to till the ground, he likes to garden. And she talked about how people who till the ground, who like to plant and like to do things with the ground, hear from God in a different way than other people. I think that your giftings minister to you because as a person who sings, as a creative, as a woman who sings and is now studying, back studying piano, I believe that God ministers to musicians and singers, people who are in the musical arts. You tend to be sensitive in a way that others aren't. And I'm looking forward to being ministered to that way. So I will talk to you guys later. I'll see you on Wednesday, and I plan to come prepared to talk a little more in depth about Bishop Pearson and the controversy that involved, go into a little more detail and why he was found to be in error, and how the people who found him in error are now in error towards some of their members. It's really weird. So I will talk to you guys later. You have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your week.